In the bustling city of Nanjing, China, a young girl named Mei possesses a rare gift. She's a math genius who can solve complex equations effortlessly. Her memory is like a vault, storing every number she encounters without fail. One day, while walking home with her friends, Mei is suddenly snatched off the street by a group of men and taken to a notorious Chinese mafia boss named Han. His criminal activities are under constant surveillance, so he needs someone like Mei to keep track of his shady dealings without leaving a paper trail. Initially, Mei resists, but when Han threatens her mother's life, she has no choice but to comply. To keep her hidden, Han entrusts her to Chong, one of his loyal gang members, who takes her to New York and disguises her as his daughter. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, a former cop and cage fighter named Luke is in the middle of a brutal fight. He's supposed to throw the match, but things take a tragic turn when he accidentally knocks out his opponent, leaving him in a coma. This blunder infuriates Emil, the head of the Russian mafia, who loses a fortune because of Luke's mistake. Luke knows that crossing a mobster like Emil puts his family in grave danger. He rushes home, only to find he's too late. Emil's son, Vasil, has already murdered his pregnant wife. Crushed by his loss, Luke doesn't even fight back, as the thugs warn him that they'll kill anyone he talks to, leaving him utterly isolated. With nowhere else to turn, Luke heads to New York, where he ends up living on the streets, completely broken and homeless. A year passes, and Mei is still working for the gang. Chong takes her out on regular rounds through the city, where she memorizes the profits and losses of various businesses. These shop owners are forced to pay a portion of their earnings to the gang, making Mei an invaluable asset. Over time, she becomes well-versed in the ruthless world of gang business. Luke, on the other hand, is barely surviving in a filthy homeless shelter. One night, he meets a man with no shoes and a badly infected foot. Feeling sorry for him, Luke gives him his shoes, only to wake up the next morning and find the man dead, his throat slit, and the shoes stolen. Life on the streets has been nothing short of a nightmare for Luke. Back in Chinatown, a woman who works with Chong approaches Mei late at night with devastating news. Her mother has passed away in China after a long illness. The next day, Han arrives in New York for the first time since Mei was brought over. He gives her a piece of paper with a string of numbers, instructing her to memorize them. Mei commits the numbers to memory in a matter of seconds, knowing they must be crucial, as Han immediately burns the paper afterward. Chong then takes Mei to a new location, where she's told she'll need to memorize another set of numbers upon arrival. However, before they can reach their destination, they are ambushed by the Russian mafia, led by Emil, the very man responsible for Luke's wife's death. The Russians want Mei because of the valuable numbers stored in her memory. A violent shootout breaks out, and the Chinese gangsters are overpowered. The Russians capture Mei and take her away. Meanwhile, Luke's day goes from bad to worse when a stranger steals his breakfast money. As he's trying to scrape together something to eat, he runs into an old colleague from his days on the police force. Recognizing Luke, the cop and his buddies drag him to an abandoned building. These cops still hold a grudge against Luke for exposing their corrupt ties to local gangsters years ago. They beat him up and mock him, but Luke doesn't fight back. At the end of their brutal assault, one of the cops hands Luke a gun, urging him to take his own life. Luke refuses, walking away battered but unbroken. Meanwhile, Mei is taken to Emil, who demands that she recite the numbers she's memorized. It's then that Mei realizes the woman who informed her of her mother's death had been working with Emil all along. The woman pressures Mei to reveal the code, but Mei predicts that the woman will be killed once she's no longer useful. Sure enough, the Russians shoot the woman on the spot. Mei knows she'll face the same fate if she gives up the numbers, so she stays silent. Just then, Captain Wolf, a corrupt cop who used to work with Luke, shows up at the Russian hideout. He's not there to enforce the law but to carry out orders from Han, the Chinese mafia boss. Emil offers Captain Wolf a hefty bribe to turn a blind eye, and the crooked cop takes the deal, leaving the Russians to their business. Amidst the chaos, Mei manages to slip away unnoticed as both the Russian and Chinese gangs scramble to find her. Mei ends up at a subway station where Luke is contemplating suicide. He's just moments away from jumping onto the tracks when he locks eyes with Mei, a terrified little girl, and something inside him shifts. He also spots the Russian thugs who murdered his wife chasing after her. Mei boards the subway to escape, but the gangsters are hot on her trail. Sensing she's in danger, Luke decides to intervene. He clings to the side of the moving subway car, taking out the Russians one by one. One of them recognizes Luke from their past encounter shocked to see him fighting back so fiercely. After dispatching the last thug, Luke finally approaches May, but she mistakes him for another bad guy and flees as soon as the subway stops. Determined to find her, Luke overhears a police radio announcing a red alert. He quickly realizes that the corrupt cops, who are just as compromised as the gangsters, are also hunting for May and will likely hand her over to the mafia if they catch her. A few minutes later, the same cops who had beaten Luke earlier spot May and try to capture her. Luke arrives just in time, effortlessly taking down the cops, proving that his earlier silence was a matter of choice, not weakness. May, still unsure about Luke, hesitates but eventually jumps into a car with him as the Russian mafia closes in. What follows is a wild car chase through the streets of Manhattan, with Luke skillfully outmaneuvering the Russians and ultimately taking them down. After the chaos, Luke grabs the wallets of the defeated thugs and takes May to a luxury hotel. Elsewhere, Captain Wolf hears about the situation and learns that May was taken by Luke, not the mafia. He's shocked, as Luke has kept a low profile since leaving the force. At the hotel, May starts to trust Luke and reveals the numbers she has memorized. Luke quickly figures out that the numbers are a safe combination. May also mentions that she was supposed to memorize a second number before the Russians ambushed them, suggesting there are two safes containing something valuable, likely connected to the Chinese mafia. Meanwhile, Chong tracks May's location through her phone and storms the hotel with his men. Chaos erupts as a shootout begins, sending people scrambling for safety. During the mayhem, Luke and May are separated. Chong captures May while Luke narrowly escapes, determined to rescue her no matter what. To do so, Luke decides to use the phone he stole earlier to contact Vasil, Emil's son, the same man who murdered his wife. Posing as a gang member, Luke claims he has the highly sought-after numbers. Vasil, believing him, instructs Luke to meet him at a casino to hand over the codes. In a separate twist, the city's mayor contacts Captain Wolf to discuss the recent spike in violence. It turns out the mayor and his partner, Alex, are as corrupt as the rest. The mayor reveals that Luke wasn't just an ordinary cop, he was a CIA agent embedded in the police force after September 11th. During his time on the force, Luke and Alex took down several crime bosses to bring order to the city. However, Luke quit after exposing Captain Wolf's corrupt activities, while Alex stayed behind, cozying up to the mayor to climb the ranks. Captain Wolf now realizes that Luke, the man he had written off as a washed-up loser, is actually his most dangerous enemy. Meanwhile, Alex, now the mayor's corrupt lover, becomes anxious when he finds out Luke and May are together. It's clear he knows something about the safes and the combinations. Back with the Chinese mafia, May is returned to Han, who interrogates her about whether she shared the combination with anyone. May lies, claiming she pretended not to understand English, in a desperate attempt to protect both herself and Luke. Chong then contacts Alex, informing him that they have captured the girl and can proceed with their meeting. It becomes evident that the Chinese mafia's business associates are none other than the mayor and Alex, who are entangled in a dubious trade involving the contents of their respective safes. Luke arrives at the casino, where he ambushes Vasil's crew and takes him hostage, planning to use him as leverage against Emil. He calls Emil, demanding to know what is inside the safe in exchange for Vasil's life. Emil spills the details. The Chinese gangster's safe contains $30 million, while the mayor's safe holds something of equal worth. The plan was to use May to facilitate the trade, but the Russians disrupted it. Now that the Chinese have May, they are ready to proceed with the deal. Chong is en route to meet Alex to exchange the codes to save May. Luke needs to get his hands on the $30 million before the trade takes place, but he knows he can't do it alone. The safe is hidden deep in Chinatown, guarded by the most hazardous members of the Chinese mafia, so Luke turns to his former cop friends for assistance. They agree, but only for the money. The group storms the hideout, leading to a violent shootout that leaves several gangsters and officers dead. When they ultimately reach the safe, Luke betrays the cops, killing them all except for Captain Wolf, whom he takes hostage along with Vasil. Luke grabs the cash from the safe and makes his way to the mayor's office. On his way, Luke calls Alex, demanding to know what is in the second safe. With Luke holding all the money, Alex has no choice but to comply. He reveals that the second safe belongs to the mayor and contains a disc with incriminating data on every crime syndicate. The mayor had intended to sell the disc to the Chinese, pocket the $30 million, and allow the gangs to fight it out. With the money already taken, Alex attempts to reconnect with Luke, but is ordered to bring May along as she is crucial to the plan. Alex obliges, eliminating Chong and his men before driving to meet Luke with May in tow. In the next scene, Luke storms into the mayor's office, demanding the contents of the second safe. Although the mayor hesitates, he eventually hands over the disk containing the syndicate data. Luke knocks him out and heads off to meet Alex, now in possession of both the money and the information. Luke holds all the cards, but Alex has one last trick up his sleeve. May. When they meet to exchange May for the cash, Luke proposes they resolve matters with a fight instead. Confident, Alex prepares for a brawl, but is taken by surprise when May shoots him in the leg. Seizing the opportunity, Luke swiftly finishes him off. With Alex out of the equation, Luke and May are finally free. They possess the money, the disc, and their lives. To ensure May's safety, Luke releases Captain Wolf with $50,000 as a payoff and frees Vasil to avoid retaliation from the Russians. As for Han, the Chinese mafia leader, Luke sends him the remaining money to deter him from pursuing May further. Finally, Luke hides copies of the disc in various spots around the city as insurance, so if anyone comes after them, they have leverage. In the closing scene, Luke and May hit the road, heading to Seattle to start anew.